Okay, there was recently an article, and you can check the link below, written by a fellow named Sater, demonstrating the fact that Sony A7R2 is not a small and compact system, and with everything there is a trade-off. I'm going to go through line by line. There was a rebuttal written to this. Article says rebuttal to Sater's argument, written by one of the guys that runs one of the Sony boards. And I'm going to point out to you a few of the many errors that he makes in the rebuttal to Sater's article and why it's nonsense. Here you take a look at the first picture. We have a Nikon D750 on the right with a 50mm 1.8G, and on the left we have a Sony A7R2 with a 50mm f1.8. Now, in the rebuttal, um, or the debunking article, as the Sony Alpha boys called it, to Sater's article, they state, well, size isn't the primary thing. They say, well, it's the IBIS and it's the Sony system. Well, when was that the case? These people have been talking about size being one of the primary issues of purchasing the Sony system forever. So really? Really? Since when? This is all these goons have been talking about for years, is that it's smaller. When confronted with the facts that it's not smaller, then they shifted to something else. We call that in fallacies, it's called moving the goalpost. It's kind of like where someone draws a line in the sand and say, I dare you to cross it. And then you cross it, and then they draw another line. So they're always moving the goalpost. It's a fallacy. Here, take a look at the Tamron 90mm mounted on the Nikon D750. And over here we have the Sony A7R2 90mm f2.8. Well, I certainly see absolutely no size advantage. In the rebuttal article, or the debunking article as they call it, the person who runs the Sony Alpha board states, please give us the physical formula that says that lenses have to be larger. Where is the science supporting your argument? Well, the science is irrefutable, because it's absolutely an undeniable, irrefutable fact that fast normal lenses at 50mm and above are huge by necessity. Show me a small 24 to 70 2.8. Show me a small 85mm f1.4. Show me a small 70mm to 200mm f2.8. These are necessarily huge. End of argument. There's no refuting it. There's no denying it. The one thing that these fanboys keep pointing to in the rebuttal or the debunking articles, they call it, are some wide-angle lenses at 35mm and below. The key thing that they're missing in their ignorance and arrogance is that the important lenses to photography, and by the way, Sony has not come up with like a 16 to 35 2.8 lens yet. They don't have any such lens. The design difficulties. See the Sony A7R2 E-mount with that full-frame sensor and IBIS was never designed for full-frame lenses. Here's another example. Here we have the 85mm f1.G on the Nikon D750, and on the left we have the Sony A7R2 85mm. Now, I don't know if you know it or not, and I have one, but the Nikon D750 is a huge damn camera, and there's no denying the Sony is a small damn camera. It is. It's small. Now you tell me where the size advantage is here. You and I both know that these Sony fanboys have been chirping about how small the size is. They've been chirping and squawking about it for years, but now that it's proven that it's not smaller at all, when you talk about normal lenses that professional photographers use, and what are those lenses? The 85mm 1.8, the 85mm 1.4, the 24 to 70 2.8, the 70 to 200 2.8. Those are the three Trinity lenses of professional photographers. When you mount those lenses, I'm not talking about wide angles at 40mm and below. I'm talking about the Trinity lenses. When you mount that on a Sony, you do not have a smaller damn camera. Irrefutable, undeniable. Why must they be big? Because they're fast. And if you can show me a fast 24 to 70 2.8 or 70 to 200 2.8 that has a small front element on it, well, I will give you a free pet unicorn. You know why? Because it doesn't exist. So when the Sony fanboys say, please give us a physical formula that says you can't design a small lens, where is the science supporting this argument in the rebuttal to Sater's article? Well, it's a hardcore, undeniable damn fact. There's no denying it. When it comes to the Trinity lenses, And the 85mm 1.8 or 1.4 prime, these are fast lenses, and they are, by necessity and optical necessity and physics, irrefutably huge, bloody lenses. You can't deny it. It's irrefutable. No other small lenses exist. Here's an 80 to 200. Here's the G-Masta 70 to 200 2.8. See, these lenses are huge. Now, the one thing that you're noticing here on the right was we have a huge Nikon D750. This body is a lot thicker than the Sony A7R2. Now, you see this flange mount down here at the bottom? Oh, yes, and you see that it doesn't exist over here? Well, it does exist. It exists in the mirror box. Okay, the mirror box. The sensor is back here. The Sony sensor is right here. To spread that light out across the full frame sensor with IBIS, in-body image stabilization, this flange right here exists to spread that light out at the very last element. Okay, to match up with that in-body image stabilization and full frame sensor. The Sony A7R2 E-mount with full frame sensor and IBIS was never designed, technically, to handle fast Trinity lenses. Trinity 2470 2.8, 70 200 2.8, 85mm prime was not designed for it. It's not designed for it. Now, in the rebuttal article written by the fanboys, they state, addressing the fact that these lenses are rather huge on the Sony, and the rebuttal to that is, well, the 85mm G-Masta lens is made for ultimate quality. It's a future-proof lens. Well, do you know what that means? It's magic unicorn dust talk. It's meaningless fanboy rabble. It means 100% absolutely nothing. I mean, there's no meaning to it. So you can tell the most from these Kool-Aid drinking fanboys by what they avoid talking about. Said fanboy, a rebuttal article, or what they call the debunking article, doesn't address the fact that the very, very tiny Sony A7R2, which is a tiny camera, by the way, but you put that 24 to 70 2.8 or that 85mm 1.4 or that 70 to 200 2.8, it's bigger than a huge Nikon D810. I know how huge the Nikon D810 is. It's a big camera. I've got a pair of them. Also, in the rebuttal article written by the Sony fanboys, it says, well, to sum up, the Zeiss 35mm and Sony 28mm FE lenses do show that a full-frame E-mount lens can be more compact than similar performing DSLR lenses. No, only if they're wide-angle lenses underneath 40mm can they be compact. You see, what the debunking article, which doesn't debunk anything written by the Sony fanboys, avoids discussing is they show you some wide-angle lenses underneath 40mm. Okay, but they don't talk about these lenses. 2470 2.8, 85mm 1.8 or 1.4, 70 to 200 2.8. You see this? Look at this. Sony A7R2 with the 24 to 70 native lens. Here we have a huge Canon 5DS. I mean, the Canon 5DS is a huge DSLR body, huge. On the far right, we have a Sony A99. All these with 24 to 70. Now, which one is large? Oh, look at this tiny little body with this. You see this flange right here? This flange compensates for the mirror box right here. This is what we call inescapable optics. It's kind of like death and taxes, one of those damn things that you can't escape. Well, this is one of those optical things that you can't escape. But these fanboys, they point to wide-angle lenses. So look, here's an example of a tiny Sony A7R2 with a 35mm on it. It's a really small lens. Yeah, let's only stick to discussing lenses that are 40mm and smaller. No. Let's discussing the lenses that professional photographers want on their bloody cameras. 2470 2.8, 85mm 1.8 or 1.4, 70 to 200 2.8, 80 to 200, same thing. No big deal there. Okay, and they'll actually go on to state, the Sony fanboys do, that neither are Sigma nor Zeiss do actually talk about Sony IBIS as far as being a limitation. Well, yeah, they do. They do speak about this. The IBIS necessitates that the largest image projection possible. Even Fuji techs and Zeiss reps have talked about the fact that in-body image stabilization, where the sensor moves on the, you can see this, it works off of electromagnetism where the actual sensor floats back and forth for in-body image stabilization. The actual image projection has to be larger than a full-frame normal DSLR with a reflex mirror because the sensor is actually moving. This is called physics. This is called death and taxes, meaning it's irrefutable. It's undeniable. When you have a moving sensor, the image circle projection needs to be even wider, or as wide as possible. It has to be. It's inescapable. It's undeniable. Now, getting back to the point that these Sony fanboys try to make from the very beginning, they say, size isn't the primary thing. That's because they've been called out, and proving the fact that their cameras with the appropriate lenses on it are not smaller. Look at this. We're looking at a Canon 5D with 85mm 1.2. The camera is huge. The camera is huge. The lens on it is faster than this tiny Sony with the 85mm 1.4. 85mm 1.2 here, 85mm 1.4. Which is smaller? Well, this is smaller, but it's on a huge camera. This is a slower lens. So let's quote Sony manager Kimio Maki in an interview. He's asked, can you summarize the benefit of choosing a Sony Alpha A7 series in a single sentence over that of a DSLR? And Kimio Maki, Sony manager, says, it is all about the size. It is a smaller and lighter. That's the main reason for choosing our A7 product. Well, it's not smaller. It's not lighter. On the Trinity lenses and the lenses professionals use the most, it is bigger. Irrefutable, undeniable. If Sony could have designed this lens smaller, they would have done it. You see, this is the physics. They say, please show us the physical formula. Where's the science? Well, here's the science from Sony itself. Right here from Sony is the science. This is an 85mm 1.2. You see this huge flange on the base of this lens? That is to compensate for IBIS and the shallow nodal point sensor mount in the Sony E-mount. This is the science. This is the irrefutable fact. Sony is giving you the science. And the fact that Sony would have designed this lens smaller if they could. You want to know the truth? They couldn't do it. Of course Sony would have designed this lens to be smaller. If they could have made this lens the size of this 85mm 1.2, they would have done it. But they can't do it. This is the science, my Sony friends. It is irrefutable and it is undeniable. Deny it. You cannot deny it. End of story. Shut up. Sony's science and facts are right here in front of you. This lens is not smaller. If Sony could have made it smaller, they would have done it. Period. Shut up. Okay? See, what was Sony's manager? What did he say? Said, the main reason for choosing our products is it is smaller and lighter. Well, it is not smaller. It is not lighter. Here we have, I know this is a DX crop sensor Fuji X-T1. This is a 56mm f1.2. This is a 50mm f1.8. F1.8? F1.2. Yeah. Okay, let's take a look at something else. Now, the Nikon D750 is huge in comparison to the Sony A7R2. Huge. There's no denying that. But you stick an 85mm 1.4 on. This is an 85mm f1.8 on the Sony. Do you see much in there? It does. This is a faster lens. It's a hair bigger, but it's already on a huge camera. This is a 1.8, this is a 1.4. Let's take a look at that. Which is smaller? This is a faster lens, but this is a huge camera body. Do you see this flange mount right here? Do you see this? Do you see that? Yeah, that is called science and irrefutability. That's correct. Here's the A7 R2 shown with a 50mm f1.8. And this is the 50mm f1.8 mounted on the Canon 5 DSR. I want to show you something else, and this is also undeniable. Okay. Now, I can't show you in the comparison, but this is an irrefutable fact. If I were to stick a Metabones adapter on this Fuji X-T1 and then mount a pancake 50mm 1.8 on top of it, it would still be thinner and slimmer than this 50mm 1.8 Sony lens, this FE lens. Metabones adapter and 50mm 1.8, it would still be slimmer. And that's a full frame lens, although it's a DX crop sensor, obviously so. So all the points made by the debunking article by the Sony fanboys in response, and I've got the link below, are nonsense. The only thing they can point to are wide-angle lenses. Okay? The Trinity lenses that professionals use, they're bigger. You gonna deny that? You gonna deny that? You gonna deny that? Which one's smaller? Oh, this is supposed to be smaller, but it's not smaller. Is that smaller? No, it's not smaller. Is that smaller? No, it's not smaller. Is that smaller? Sure as hell isn't. What's a small little camera? You're right. But when you mount that lens on there with that huge flange to compensate for the IBIS and the shallow E-mount, look at that. You gonna deny this? You can't deny it. Is it smaller? No. Oh, but they say, well, size isn't the primary thing. Well, it isn't? I thought the Sony manager said, it's all about size. It's a smaller and lighter A7 series system. No, it's not. That is a stinking lie.